Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Elisa Udaskin. I'm a director at JVS, Jewish Vocational Service. We're located in both East Orange and Montclair, New Jersey. So, a little bit about JVS as I always start. JVS was founded in 1939, and we are a nonprofit workforce development agency. And our goal is to help individuals overcome obstacles they face in terms of gaining employment. Our Job Seekers program, which this webinar is part of the Job Seekers program, is fully funded by the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West and by Project M, and we thank them both so much for their support. I am so excited to welcome our guest speaker this morning, Kathy Vincelette. Kathy is a career development professional with extensive experience helping adults navigate career transitions and workforce reentry. Most recently, she spent 8 years as an employment specialist at the ReLaunch Center at County College of Morris, helping job seekers craft strong resumes, sharpen interview skills, and navigate the job search process with confidence. Kathy is a certified professional resume writer and is currently pursuing her certified career services provider's credential through the National Career Development Association. So I'd love to turn it over to Kathy now.
All right, great. Thanks for that great introduction, Elisa, and thanks for inviting me back. I was able to speak with your group in 2024, so I'm excited to be back again. So let's get started. We're going to be talking about how to answer common interview questions today. And note, this is not a comprehensive list. I really just picked the most common ones that consistently get asked. There's certainly plenty of questions out there. This is not meant to be comprehensive, but just to focus on some key ones that you need to answer well. All right, so let's talk about a Career Builder survey found that 51% of hiring managers decide within the first 5 minutes if a candidate is a good fit. And I'm not giving you this statistic to scare you, but to make you realize that it is important to start off strong. And I'm a big believer in preparation equals confidence. So that's what we're talking about today. And by you being here today, you are preparing. If you think about how you want to answer these questions, you will be more confident when you get them, and you're going to make a stronger first impression. So with that, I want to ask you, if you can put in the chat, what interview question do you dread the most? And that maybe will help me today as we go through the presentation. So which one do you dread the most? And maybe, Elisa, you can tell me what some of those are as we get going. Oh yeah, the tell me about yourself. I'm seeing that. What salary are you expecting? Why should I hire you? Oh, your guys are in luck. We're going to cover these today. All right. Whoops. All right, so today, some of our objectives is to identify why the employer is asking you this question. What exactly are they trying to find out? What is it they want to know? We're going to talk about do's and don'ts for when you answer these questions. We're going to definitely cover behavioral questions and all those tell me about a time when kind of questions. All of you who are currently not working, it's awkward when you get asked, why have you been out of the workforce? And we're going to talk about how you can talk about your gap. The salary question, definitely you want to be ready for that one. And then also you want to be ready with your own strong closing questions. So that's what we're going to cover today. All right, let's talk about what is an interview. It's really an imperfect assessment tool. This is not a perfect method, right? We all know this. There's a lot of subjectivity in the interview process. But it's a conversation where they're going to be looking to see if you have clarity in your career goals and if you're confident. It should be a two-way exchange that you're going to get insight into the role as well. There's many people who take the wrong jobs because, they didn't find out what they needed to on that interview, right? So you're interviewing the company as well. And it's a chance for you to show your very best. When you go to an interview, you want them to know everything good about you, right? You want to leave that interview saying, hey, I told them all the good stuff. And that's what you want to feel like at the end of an interview. And I always tell people, I was a recruiter in the past. My advice always as a recruiter is your job as a candidate is to get an offer. So when you go in for that interview, you play your hand to the end. You might not know if you really want the job. Maybe some things come up during the interview that you're not so thrilled about. You hear, oh, I might have to work on a Saturday. You're like, I don't know if I want to work Saturdays. Put all of that aside and just get to the end of the process, because you do not have any power. You have no decision to make until you have an offer in hand. Then you can negotiate. Maybe you can talk about that Saturday. Maybe you can talk about I need to leave at 4:30 every Thursday to see my kids' volleyball game. But you don't do that up front. You don't decide it up front. You play your hand to the end. So that's my recruiter hat talking. All right. So we're going to talk about the stages of an interview. So you always do some preparation before the interview. At the beginning, the intro of the interview, there's always going to be the welcome. How'd you find our office? You know, some small talk. Well, I guess these days, how did you find our Zoom link? But tell me about yourself. And then at the core of the interview, they get into your experience and skills. Do you have what it takes to do the job? And then they're going to ask you those behavioral questions. At the end of the interview, that's when they're going to say, do you have any questions for me? And this is when you should be finding out what is their timeline for making a decision and definitely expressing interest. And let's not forget, it's really important to follow up after the interview. So we'll talk about all these stages today. All right, so just briefly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just some basics. Preparing before the interview. This is really essential. You need to research the company. Go visit their website. Understand their mission statement, their vision, their values. This is really easy to do to find out about recent news, any updates. You can use AI to do research on a company. I mean, that, artificial intelligence makes it super easy to go and get this information. Go look up your interviewer's background, and it's always a good thing. Make sure when you're looking that you are looking as your name, not in stealth mode on LinkedIn, because if the interviewer has the ability to see who looked at their profile, they're going to say, wow, Elisa did her homework before she came in today. She looked me up. So that's always a good thing. And then, of course, look for any mutual connections. And you should know why you want to work at the company. Why is that a company or position that you're interested in? It has to be about that one specifically, and we'll talk about that. You want to practice your responses. You definitely want to review common interview questions. You need to identify how your skills and experience match up with that job description. Even if you want to do like a chart where you just say, here's the skill and here's where I've had it. Here's the experience, here's where I've had it. Lay it all out so you can match up your experience very well with that job posting. You want to prepare examples because you can't just tell what you've done. You have to show what you've done with an example. And you want to practice aloud. You don't need to have it memorized, but record yourself on your phone or practice with a friend. That's really helpful. And last but not least, you do need to prepare insightful questions. You need to have questions ready at the end of the interview. All right, so here's some of those common intro questions. You always get the tell me about yourself at the top of the interview. And keep in mind that interviewers have seen your resume and maybe they saw it 2 weeks ago and they knew you were coming in today for an interview. Now they just came out of a meeting and they're sitting down and they kind of sort of remember you. But this is also, a way for them to buy, not only, buy some time and just has a refresher like, okay, yeah, Lisa, I did meet, I did see her resume. I did like it. But now is the chance for Elisa to say, okay, what am I going to highlight about myself, right? So what you choose to talk about is important. But that's one question. Why are you interested in this role? Why did you leave, or why did you leave your last job, or why are you leaving your current job? And then why is there a gap in your employment you might get if you've recently been unemployed? So let's talk about how to answer these. All right, tell me about yourself. They want to know, can you do the job effectively? Will you fit well within the team and company culture? Do you communicate with that clarity and confidence? And are you motivated and likely to stay? So this really tells them a lot about what you choose to talk about. This gives them a sense of who you are, and this also sets the precedence for the rest of the interview. If you can answer, tell me about yourself really well, you're off to a great start. And this can really go in your favor for the rest of the interview. All right, so tips for answering. You have to answer what's relevant to the role in the company. If you might have skills in a certain area that are terrific, but if they're not related to the position, you don't want to spend time on that, right? You want to talk about what is related to what their job is. You want to keep it professional. Tell me about yourself. You can add in a few tidbits that are personal, perhaps. If you move to the area, you're new to the area, or you grew up there, or what have you. There might be something relevant, but in general, it's not wise to share personal information. You want to highlight your key experience and accomplishments. You definitely want to show that enthusiasm. I mean, enthusiasm sells. Who doesn't want to hire somebody who's all geeked out and excited about the field that they're in, right? So that's always a selling feature. You want to be concise when you practice your tell me about yourself. You want to keep it to 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And it's good, again, to practice with somebody or record yourself and time yourself. See how long it takes. Choose the right starting point for your story. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And you want to practice but don't memorize. And know your audience and adapt. Are you talking to the human resources person? Are you talking to the hiring manager? Are you talking to the vice president? Your scope might change. Things that you talk about might change. Stay positive. You definitely don't want to be Debbie Downer when you're doing Tell Me About Yourself, even though you might have had some tough times recently. We'll talk about a way to talk about if you've been out of the workforce recently, how to get past that. And deliver with confidence. So this is your great first impression that you're going to give. All right, so there's a formula. And I'm going to tell you that there's one way to say it if you are currently working and another way to say it if you are currently unemployed. So let's look first at the answer for if you're employed. So this is a present, past, future. If you think about how to formulate your answer, you're starting out with who you are now, what you're doing currently, and you're highlighting again what's most relevant to the job, kind of comparing, well, hey, I'm in a digital marketing role now, and then this is a digital marketing role I'm interviewing for. So you're kind of lining that up. Past, then you briefly connect your background to the core skills of the position. You select highlights, not your full work history. Again, if you worked in a different field, that's not relevant to this position. You're going to maybe skip over that. You do not and tell me about yourself. That's different than walk me through your resume. You don't need to go through every position you've held. Remember, you're keeping it relevant to the job you're interviewing for. And you're going to close with a forward-looking statement about why this job makes sense for you now. So we're going to take a look at what that might look like. So if I can get a volunteer to read this first example.
I'm currently a project coordinator with experience managing timelines, vendors, and cross-functional communication. Previously, I supported operations and process improvement initiatives, which strengthened my ability to organize complex work and collaborate with diverse teams. I'm excited about this role because it blends coordination, communication, and problem solving, areas where I thrive, and I'm eager to contribute to your team's growth.
All right, thank you. So this answer is focused and structured, right? It shows relevance. You don't overshare. It highlights your value. You demonstrate motivation. You're ending with, positive words like I'm eager to contribute. I'm excited. That's all positive language. That's that enthusiasm we talked about. All right, thank you for reading that, Linda. All right, let's try another one. This is another one if you're currently employed. This is if you are a career development professional.
I'm a career development professional with about 5 years of experience helping students and job seekers strengthen their resumes, interview skills, and employer connections. In my current role, I've boosted employer engagement by over 40% by building relationships, improving communication systems, and creating more intentional outreach strategies. Before that, I worked in student support and community partnerships, which strengthened my ability to coach individuals, collaborate with employers, and design programs that support career readiness. I'm really excited about this opportunity because it's a mission-aligned role that combines career coaching, employer engagement, and program development, where areas where I've made a strong impact and where I'm eager to continue growing.
Okay, thank you. So you notice now, if you can add in metrics, that's always helpful, right? Just like you do on your resume, that's always helpful to highlight. But they're starting out with, I've had 5 years, I've been able to do these things. They talk about an accomplishment here. I boosted employer engagement. Before that, it's kind of like I did this where I accomplished that. Before I worked here where I did, I accomplished this. So you're hitting a highlights. It's a highlights story. It doesn't have to be everything you did. You definitely don't want to get into a long-winded description of the responsibilities of your position or anything like that. Keep it to, just the facts. And this might be something that you write out and you practice and you keep editing it down and getting it tighter and tighter, because there's a lot of extraneous information. You don't want to get into the weeds when you answer this question. And this is very pointed. And then it ends with, why this role. This is kind of like, it answers that question. Why am I sitting in front of you today? Why does this role make sense for me? And hey, I'm super excited about it. All right, so thank you for reading. So what if you are currently unemployed? So maybe your formula goes a little bit differently because you don't want to start out with, well, I just got laid off, because that's not a great way to start off. This is a much more positive way to do it if you kind of reverse the order. So instead, you're going to start by summarizing your past experience, the things that make you well suited for the role. Then you're going to talk about presently, and you might say that you have been laid off, but now you're going to talk about the positive things you've been doing since that time. And it might be volunteering, it might be upskilling, maybe you're going back to school, you might be doing some contractor freelance work, maybe you're doing some professional development, or maybe you've been focusing on your job search. But that's all valid, but it's good to talk about in a positive manner what you're doing currently. And then again, you're going to end with why this role makes sense for you. So we're just changing it slightly, but this avoids you having to lead with, I'm currently unemployed. So somebody can read this for me, please.
I spent the last 5 years as a senior analyst leading reporting, automation, and past improvement
one left.
projects. Can you hear me? Okay. After a company-wide layoff earlier this year, I've been taking advanced courses in data visualization and working on portfolio projects while exploring roles that align with my strengths. I'm excited about this position because it combines analysis, communication, and process improvement, the areas where I consistently delivered results.
All right, thank you. So this one, avoids answering with the gap. It's summarizing. I spent the last 5 years doing X. And then after a company-wide layoff, I've been taking courses. Notice it says, while exploring roles that align with my strengths. It doesn't say I've been having a terrible job search and it's gone on forever. It's really, you're making it positive. And let me remind you folks is that nobody needs to know when exactly you started your job search, how many interviews you have or have not been on. They don't need to know. You can make yourself a hot commodity. You can say, listen, I'm just, I'm being selective in roles that I apply for. I'm looking for ones that really align with my strengths and values. Or, I took some time to spend with family, and then I started my job search in earnest, right? So they don't know what the story is. You don't have to tell them everything. Yes, I've had a few interviews, but nothing that's been the right fit. Maybe you even haven't had any interviews. I don't know. I don't believe that you need to present, you don't need to share TMI on your job search, and you can certainly portray it as more positive than perhaps it is. So that's
So
okay.
Kathy, I
But
just interject because I think that is so important about projecting confidence and owning it. So when I've been in this situation in the past, I owned it, that I decided to, after I was downsized or whatever, that I wanted to take time to be at home with my kids and take more contract roles. And it's true, but I also was interviewing and didn't find the right role in terms of permanent. So that's what ended up happening. But projecting the confidence, it starts within your head, owning it, not being embarrassed. It's all valid, and then owning it, and that exactly, not being apologetic. Exactly what Kathy said. That's all I wanted to interject. Yeah, thank
thanks,
you.
Lisa. And we'll talk about that again too when we talk about why do you have a gap. All right, if I can get a volunteer to read this second example for if you were recently laid off, how to answer.
For the past 7 years, I've worked in operations and customer service roles where I focused heavily on improving processes and enhancing the customer experience. One of my proudest experiences was reducing wait times by 22% by redesigning workflow steps and training staff on more efficient service techniques. And earlier this year, my position was eliminated as part of a company-wide restructuring. Since then, I've been taking operations. I'm taking operations analytics courses, working on process improvement projects to keep my skills sharp, and being very intentional in targeting roles where I can make a measurable impact. And that's why I'm excited about this efficiency-focused role. It aligns directly with my experience, streamlining systems, solving problems, and improving the customer outcomes, and I'd love to bring that same value to your team.
All right, thank you for reading. So again, this avoids opening with the gap. It keeps the tone confident and positive and forward-looking. It reframes your unemployment as a transition, not a problem, right? So that's what you want to do. All right, thanks everybody for reading. So let's move on to why are you interested in this position? What are they asking this for? They want to know what motivated you to apply for the job. Maybe you did in fact answer it at the end of your tell me about yourself, but if not, if they still ask you this question, they're looking to find out, do you understand the role? Are you genuinely excited about this job in this organization? And does this position align with your goals? And actually, I had an interview. I started a new job a month ago, and they asked me this question. It was one of the first questions they asked me. Why are you interested in this job? So how do you answer this? You do want to cite something specific about this role, this company that interested you. You want to connect the job to your skills and goals. Why does this make sense for you? Does it fit your background, and does it meet your future goals, your career goals? You want to show genuine enthusiasm and demonstrate the value that you're bringing. You don't want to give vague or generic answers. You don't want to say, well, it's really close to my house. I've been commuting into the city. That's fine. That might be true, but that can't be the reason you give them. All right. You don't want to overshare about your job search struggles. Like that whole vibe of I need a job, any job, that's not going to sell. So you definitely want to say why you, right? You want to hire somebody who really wants you know, the job and wants to be there and is excited about you, right? So it's kind of like dating. You want it to be mutual. So you want to be sure that you can make that connection. So they want to know if somebody is going to stay. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. That's why they're asking, why are you interested? Because if they, you know, get a hint of, well, this isn't really, you know, what you're looking to do ultimately, they might worry that you're not going to stay in the role. Like, for instance, the position I took was part-time, and they said one of the other candidates they interviewed did share he was looking for a full-time job, right? So you want to be careful how you answer this. It has to make sense, and you have to sell that. All right, so can I have somebody answer this for me, or read this example answer?
Excited about this role because because it aligned perfectly with my background in operation and process improvement. The emphasis on streamlining workflows and improving customer experience stood out to me. I have led initiatives that reduce wait times by 22%, and I see a strong match between my skills and the impact you are aiming for. I would love to bring the same results-focused approach to your team.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this answer, you know, it makes it very clear. You're talking about a strong match between my skills and the impact you're aiming for. Again, the words in there, I'm excited about this role. This really stood out to me. I'd love to bring that same approach. All these are really positive words of excitement, right? And that's what you want to inject. All right, another example. If you're a career changer, why are you interested in this role?
I'm interested in this position because it blends the communication, problem solving, and client support skills I've built in my previous roles with the chance to move into a field I'm genuinely excited about. I was especially drawn to how your team values collaboration and continuous improvement. Those are strengths I've demonstrated throughout my career. I see a strong fit between what this role requires and what I naturally do well, and I'm motivated to bring my transferable skills into a new context where I can add value quickly and continue to grow.
Okay. So here, you know, when you are a career changer, you need to sell to the company why your transferable skills are going to be a fit, right? And you want to draw the lines for them. You know, it's just, you know, connecting this for them is very powerful because you're saying, you know, the communication, problem solving, and client support skills. Hey, these are the essence of your job, and it's the essence of my career, even though I'm maybe not coming out of the same industry, right? So it's important to draw these lines for them. And again, a positivity here, genuinely excited. I see a strong fit. I naturally do this well. I'm going to, add value quickly and continue to grow. So this is language you can incorporate in your own answers that helps it really be more positive. So you might get that question, why are you leaving your current job, or why did you leave your last job, right? They want to know, are you leaving for positive professional reasons? Were you on good terms with your last employer? They're always trying, especially the HR people, kind of suss out, was there any problem there? Why were you let go if you were fired from the position? They're trying to find that out. Does this move align with your career goals? They want to make sure it makes sense. And are you likely to stay? Again, companies are risk averse. They want to make sure they're going to hire somebody who's going to stay in the role. So they're looking for tips. Are you a job hopper? Are you a problem employee? So they're trying to find that out. So you want to be honest, but keep it high level, right? Again, positivity. There's no negativity in an interview. You want to keep it positive and professional. You're going to give one clear, simple reason. You're going to focus on what you're moving towards, right? We want to talk about what you're going towards, not what we're running away from. You want to make sure that it's going towards growth, alignment, new challenges. There has to be a positive reason here. You want to keep your answer brief, just 30 to 60 seconds. Again, ending with enthusiasm. You definitely don't want to overshare or go into unnecessary detail. Your last job might have been a nightmare, but that is not something you can talk about in the interview. Your boss might have been very difficult. That's not something you can talk about. You always want to speak very carefully. In fact, I had a client years ago who went on a job interview, and they asked this question. And she was a paralegal. She was working for an attorney, and she said, "Well, my current boss is a yeller. He's very mean and aggressive." And the interviewer says, "Oh, Joe, I'm so surprised. I play golf with Joe. I think Joe's great." So you never know who knows who. So learn from that. So don't be very careful about how you speak about past employers and past bosses or coworkers. You don't want to give multiple reasons that sound like complaints. You can't be like, well, the commute was in New York and my boss was a jerk and they didn't pay well. No, you can't say any of those things. And you definitely don't want to ever come across as bitter. And I understand it's tough. You worked for a company for 20 years and you were laid off, and it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But unfortunately, in interviews, they're expecting you to bring your A game and to be positive. So you're going to need to reframe that and find a way to talk about it. So what are some reasons that you can give for leaving a position? You can say, look, I'm looking for a new challenge or a growth opportunity. I want a higher level role. Maybe that there was no opportunity for advancement where you were. You want a position that's more aligned with your long-term goals. You wanted to explore a new industry, or maybe you wanted to move from the corporate America into like the nonprofit sector, or go into higher education, whatever it is. Maybe you want to change what industry you are working in. You're ready for a different work environment. You're ready, to just change it up. You want a bigger company, a smaller company. Maybe you're relocating. Maybe you've been laid off, or there's layoffs coming and you're facing uncertainty. That's a valid reason to leave. Or sometimes there's a change in management, right, that we don't like and it goes in a different direction. But how can you talk about this? So let's do another example. If I can have a new volunteer read. And this is leaving because of a difficult boss. So please note what they say here.
I'll read. I'm looking for a new opportunity because I'm ready for an environment that offers more collaboration and clearer communication. I've learned a lot in my current role, but the structure has made it difficult to grow, and difficult to grow and contribute at the level I'd like. I'm excited about this position because it aligns with my strengths, and I see the kind of teamwork and leadership style that allows people to thrive.
Okay, great. So was there any mention of the boss who's a jerk? No, not at all. I mean, people can read through the lines, they can understand. I'm ready for an opportunity that offers more collaboration. Well, you can guess maybe that, you had a boss who was very authoritarian and didn't really, allow you to voice your opinion or collaborate with you on anything. They can understand that, but you're putting it in a positive way, right? Clearer communication. Maybe management was a hot mess. People had very little direction. Again, you're not saying that, but you're saying, I just want a clearer communication. Again, tying it back to their company, and I'm seeing that here, teamwork and leadership is going to allow people to thrive, right? Again, that excitement, that forward-looking kind of comment. All right, so
No,
let's.
Kathy, I think that what's really great about the way that you've positioned this is it opens up to learn more from the interviewer because when you say the answer, hopefully the interviewer is having a conversation with you and they can maybe talk, and it's a conversation. It's not just question, answer.
Right.
And hopefully it's an opening for them to talk about the culture and to talk about the communication at their organization as you're learning about them. So I love how you position this.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. All right. So maybe here's another example. Maybe you're leaving to pursue a higher level role, which many people do, right? This is totally legit. Lisa, why don't you read this one?
Sure. I've really enjoyed my time in my current position. It's helped me build strong skills in marketing and sales. At this point, there isn't much room to advance internally, and I'm ready for a higher level role with more responsibility. That's what drew me to this position. It offers the scope and challenge I'm looking for, and it aligns well with my experience and long-term goals.
Okay, again, you're tying it in for them. I think always messaging with why this job makes sense, how it ties to my skills, abilities, and interests going forward. You're always drawing that through line in your answers. So I think that's important. All right, thanks, Elisa. All right, so why is there a gap in your employment? And we're going to do this later as an exercise because it's important that you answer this well. I think we're all very self-conscious when we have a gap. I had a gap for many years. I stayed home taking care of 3 kids, and going back to work, and it's like, well, why is there a gap? Why do you have this huge gap? And it feels awkward to talk about. But I think we should remember that a lot of people have gaps, and if the pandemic did anything positive, it made gaps more acceptable because people understood that you can't have should be gone are the days when from the moment you graduated high school there's like no daylight on your resume, right? So I think that is becoming a thing of the past, but still they're going to ask about it. So they want to know what you were doing. I don't know what they think. We were all traveling the world or something exciting, but apparently we have to have an answer. All right, so you want to explain it briefly and clearly without going into a lot of detail. You want to reassure them that the situation is resolved. You're ready to get back to work. Like that's done, closed. I'm ready. I'm here. I'm ready to go. Highlight any productive activities that you did, whether it was caregiving, volunteering, courses you took. You're going to refocus your interest on the role and you're going to speak confidently. Gaps definitely are common, so don't be self-conscious about it. You want to be careful not to overshare or dive into any kind of personal story. You don't want to sound unsure about your readiness to return. Definitely don't be defensive. You can't blame past employers or circumstances. Again, no negativity. And don't linger on the gap. And we all have gaps. It might be a lot of different reasons. Maybe you were laid off. Maybe you were caring for a sick family member. Maybe you had health issues yourself. We all have stuff that happens in life, right? We just need to find one sentence. We need to put together one sentence of how we're going to answer this question. 1 or 2 sentences. All right, so why is there a gap? So here's an example from laid off. Can somebody read this for me, please?
I was part of a layoff 9 months ago and began my job search right away. I've had several interviews, but I'm being thoughtful about finding the right fit. One of these things I'm looking for is opportunities to mentor and develop others. I noticed that this role includes that responsibility. Could you share more about how your team approaches it?
Ah, see, so this is like playing tennis, right? Bouncing the ball back to the interviewer. So I've had several interviews. Maybe you haven't had any interviews. It's okay. You say I've had several interviews. I'm being thoughtful about finding the right fit. Doesn't say I've been rejected 10 times, right? I'm being thoughtful about finding the right fit. Again, it's positive, right? And I think it's still true. You have to remember that throughout all this you are going to be a great employee and someone will be lucky to get you, right? You have to have that swagger like, hey, I'm awesome, I'm going to be great for whatever company hires me, so don't ever feel less than, right? So I'm being thoughtful about finding the right fit should actually be true always. All right, let's take another look at another example. Someone else want to read this one, please?
Sure. Caring for an elderly or ill family member. I had to resign from my previous position to care for my aging mother. I did this for the past year. Since then, my siblings and I have had hired a full-time caregiver, so I no longer need to be present, and I'm fully available to work now and in the future.
Okay, so this is that book is closed, right? Because now they're worried like, oh, are you going to have to leave? Are you going to get called home? You're trying to overcome objections here, right? So you're getting out in front of it, saying, listen, I cared for my aging mom. My siblings and I, we've hired a full-time caregiver. I no longer need to be present. I'm fully available to work now. So it's been resolved. That's all they want to know. Have you taken care of the situation? Are you going to be 100% dedicated to their job, right? So that's all they're looking for. But notice these are very short answers. So don't get into a lot of, oh, my mom had cancer and she was in and out of the hospital and blah, blah, blah. No, you can't go into a long-winded story. So this is something you want to practice, and that's why we're going to do that later today. All right, thank you. All right, so common core questions. So those were kind of all the beginning questions. Let's talk about the middle of the interview. You're going to get hit with the skills, knowledge, experience related questions to make sure you're qualified for the job. You're going to get the behavioral questions and that famous, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? They haven't gotten rid of this weaknesses question yet. I don't know why, but it still exists out there. But we'll talk about each of those. So one of the things I want to point out, you're going to be a politician when it comes to a skills question. When they ask you, oh, do you have experience, with Excel? Do you have experience with, Epic? Whatever it is, if you don't have it, don't panic, because sometimes we get deer in the headlights. You're like, well, no, I haven't done that. And then you feel kind of overwhelmed, like, oh no, I've messed up the interview. I don't have something. You need to be able to pivot. So you always use this no, but kind of answer. No, I haven't used that specific software before, but I'm familiar with how similar platforms work. In my last role, I was often the first person to learn new systems. For example, when our team switched to a new CRM, I took the initiative to learn it quickly and ended up training the rest of the staff. I'm confident I could get up to speed with this tool just as fast. And in fact, you can even say, I'm happy to take a course in it before my starting date. I'll start working on it. I'll start learning it. It's like, whatever it is, I've got this. Like, you have to project that confidence. No, I don't, but I don't have that, but I'm going to figure it out. Right. And so we all, have the ability to learn. We've all been in positions where we've had to learn something new on the job, and you've done it successfully in the past. You just want to share that so they understand that that's not going to be a barrier. And keep in mind, most companies do hire people with gaps. I mean, you could have somebody come in and interview with a perfect resume and they check off all the boxes for the job description. But if they're not likable or they don't really mesh with the team, they're not going to get hired. They're much more likely to hire somebody who does have one or two gaps that maybe needs to learn something if they think you're going to be a better fit and fit in with the culture. So keep that in mind. So don't let it deter you. If you don't have something, just kind of spin it such that, hey, I've got this, I will learn it. All right, so behavioral questions. These are very, very common. This might be, tell me about a challenging situation you handled. Tell me about a mistake and how you fixed it. This one's really popular. Describe a conflict with a coworker or a supervisor and how you resolved it. Give an example of a goal you set and achieved. Tell me about a time you had to prioritize competing tasks, a difficult decision you made, or a time you solved a problem creatively. And, I would advise that you take time to come up with answers to several of these, but we'll talk about that, how you do that. All right, so why are they asking this? This is that whole your past behavior and performance predicts your future performance. They want to see, on your resume, you're showing what you've done. Now they want to know how you approach things. How do you think? How do you do your job? How do you operate at work? Do you demonstrate good judgment and character and professionalism? How do you approach, problem solving and decision making? How well you collaborate, communicate, and work with others? I'll tell you, we had somebody interview for a master's level role at CCM, and when my boss asked her this question, how did you resolve a conflict with a past boss? She talked about a time she disagreed with a decision she made and told a story about how she went around his back to his manager, kind of talked poorly about this until his boss pressured him to let it go and they changed course. And all my boss could think about was, as soon as we got out of that interview, wow, so she's going to go behind my back every time she disagrees with one of my decisions. So this is really important to know how to answer these questions. They can sink, you can sink or swim here. All right, so what I want to call these are accomplishment stories. So these are the ones where you really have to put your thinking cap on, especially if you've been in the workforce for a while, because you're like, I don't know, I don't remember what I did there, or it's so long ago. You're going to need to dig for some of these stories to find ones that highlight maybe your leadership, your teamwork, your problem-solving abilities, your ability to resolve conflicts, time management and organization skills, your creativity. And note that stories will highlight more than one of these key competencies. So your stories can be flexible. And if you can come up with several of them, you can kind of pull them up in an interview and use them as you see fit, as they meet that job, right? And you want to have at least 5. I mean, some, career coaches will tell you need many more than that, but I'm going to tell you, come up with at least 5 that showcase what you've done. So these are stories about things that happened in your past, how you resolved it, projects you worked on. Think of an initiative you took. Did you improve a process at work? Did you, even if you motivated the team at a time when, you had no department head and everyone was feeling kind of demoralized. Maybe you rallied the troops. So you have to think about stories from your career that might show you as the hero, right? You should be the hero of your own story. All right, so what do we want to do? We want to use that STAR method that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. You want to explain the situation, the task that was in front of you, the action of what you did. And you have to be very careful here to use I language. And ladies, I'm talking to you because we like to share the credit and say, well, the team did this and we did that. This is where it feels uncomfortable. You have to say, I did it. You have, remember again, you're the star of the story. And the result, the positive outcome. If you have numbers, you can share that. You want to have a strong relevant example. You want to be specific about your actions. Stick to bullet points. This is something you want to write out. I've done this exercise with people before, and they will get into the weeds. Well, I was at work and it was a terrible storm that day, and I remember I was wearing my red dress, and my boss wasn't in, and they're off and it takes 10 minutes. So you're going to have to time yourself on these too. Again, this is one of those things like, tell me about yourself. You write it all out and you get your story down to the essentials. You want to aim for 1 to 2 minutes per answer. And you want to practice this so you sound confident and natural, right? This is supposed to be like, think of it as, like a TV show or a movie, like set the scene, right? You're supposed to make it look dramatic. What was the situation? What did you do to resolve it? And the happy ending. Everybody was happy at the end with your performance. All right, so if somebody could read this for me, please.
Last year, our hotel began receiving lower guest satisfaction scores related to check-in wait times. I was responsible for improving the front desk experience during peak hours. I analyzed our busiest periods, created a rotating peak coverage schedule, and trained 2 team members to handle express check-ins. As a result, our wait times dropped by 35% within 2 months, and our guest satisfaction scores increased from 77% to 92%.
Okay, and you notice this one is a really tight story because there's only one sentence per, for the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So you're keeping it focused, and you're starting with, hey, we began receiving lower guest satisfaction scores. You can say when, I worked at such and such a company, we had this issue. So again, you want to set the stage and then describe the actions. And people often forget the result. They'll say the story up till the action part, but they don't say the result. And if it's something and they ask you in the negative, like tell me about a time you made a mistake, right? Or, what did you do? You want to end up with what did you learn, right? So I learned to double check my numbers before, I send it to the VP or what have you. But it's what you learned at the end. But you always have to have the happy ending, right? There's supposed to be a happy ending. All right, can somebody else read this one for me, please?
In my last role, I noticed our teams were using different processes, which caused confusion during cross-department projects. I was asked to improve consistency across the teams. I gathered team leads, identified best practices, and created a shared operations playbook with regular check-ins. As a result, collaboration became smoother and teams had a clearer, unified way of working.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. And here, this one, again, it's great if you have numbers, if you can put them in, but if you don't, collaboration became smoother and teams had a clearer, unified way of working. So this is fine too. This is, you are the star of your stories. And so think about the different things that this shows. So you're already noticing teams are using different processes, right? So you're very observant. It was causing confusion. So you're improving consistency by identifying best practices. You create an operations playbook. So this is showing your organizational skills, your communication skills, collaboration. So you're going to notice that each of your star stories highlights several things about you. And you can use these answers depending on what the question is. All right, thank you for reading. All right, so you're also going to get that what are your strengths questions. And they're asking, do your strengths align with the company's needs? Obviously, you want to talk about the needs the strengths that most relate to the job, right? What skills or experiences set you apart? They want to see what you're strong in, maybe as opposed to other candidates. And are you going to fit in well with the team? Maybe you have a strength that the team really needs, right? So what do you want to do? You want to choose 1 to 2 strengths that match the job description. So your strengths could be a hard skill, like technical or knowledge-based abilities. That might be your computer skills, your industry knowledge, could be foreign language skills if you're bilingual. Soft skills are how you work and interact with others. So those are going to be like communication, problem solving, time management. So your strengths could be, either you can highlight either of these or both. You want to show how you've demonstrated each strength. So again, you're using that STAR method. You're giving an example of what you've done and how your strengths will help you succeed in this job. And again, you want to be concise. So one of the things you don't want to do here is say, well, I'm really good with people, I'm really organized, I'm very resourceful. Just because you list it out doesn't make it so. So you have to be careful to show how you're resourceful, to show how you have good people skills and give examples. And it doesn't have to be a specific time, but you do have to tie it to something you've done in a past role. So can somebody read this for me, please?
I could do
My
that.
biggest strength is clear communication. I am good at breaking down information so everyone knows what is expected. For example, in my last role, I created simple project updates that help keep our team aligned and reduce a lot of back and forth. I am also highly organized, which helps me manage multiple deadlines at once. Together, those strengths help me keep projects moving smoothly.
All right, thank you. So this person said, for example, in my last role, I did this. So it doesn't have to be a big story, so to speak, but you do have to mention where did you use the skill? How did you demonstrate the skill somewhere? But this showcases communication and organization. So pick a few strengths that you think are essential to the job you're interviewing for and try to come up with a practice answer so you can tie your experience into that. I mean, you don't want to talk about if the job, is, something to do with, I don't know, numbers or accounting. You don't want to necessarily talk about things that are not going to be related to the job. You want to pick something about your, analytical skills or your math skills, right? You want to pick something that's relevant. All right, so here's another example of prioritization and collaboration skills. Can someone read this for me?
I'd say one of my strengths is staying calm and organized when a lot of is happening at once. I'm good at figuring out what needs attention first and keep things moving without getting flustered. I've also been told I'm easy to work with. I communicate clearly and check in often so people aren't left guessing. Those two strengths together help me keep projects on track and build good working relationships.
Okay, good. And thank you. And notice this person, you have to be able to say good things about yourself, right? And be comfortable with that. I'd say one of my strengths is staying calm and organized when, there's chaos all around me. And, it's good to know what makes you tick, right? What sets you apart? Maybe this is something you added in your profile summary statement, right? Like what is special about you, about how you do your job, about how you are as a coworker. And I like this humble brag because it's a way to kind of slip it in that I've also been told I'm easy to work with. So you're not saying I'm easy to work with. You're saying I've been told I'm easy to work with, right? So it hits differently when you say it like that. That's feedback I've received. You can say my past supervisor used to always call me the glue that holds the department together, so you can say things like that. So don't be afraid to put in a plug for yourself. Remember, this is your chance to tell them all the good stuff about you. You want to leave it all on the table while you're at the interview. All right, so conversely from strengths, they're going to ask you this weaknesses question. And they really just want to know, do you have some self-awareness here? Can you be honest about areas you're working to improve? I mean, you don't want to be saying, well, gee, I have trouble getting up with my alarm in the morning, or I'm terrible at time management, or things like that. They're not looking for you to out yourself, but they want to see, do you have an area where you need to have some professional development, right? A skill or quality of yours that you need to work on. And they want to see that you take responsibility for it and that you're actively addressing it is really it. Are you actively pursuing growth, learning, and self-improvement? That's really the name of the game. No one expects you to be perfect. We all have our weaknesses, and it's just saying, can you recognize them and are you working on them? That's really what they want to know. And they also want to make sure that you're not going to have a weakness that will have interfere with your ability to succeed in the role. So again, applying for an accounting job saying you're not good with math probably is not a good thing, right? All right, so tips for answering. You definitely want to be authentic. You have to pick a weakness that's acceptable for the job, like I just said, not a core requirement. Choose something minor and fixable, something that's not a deal breaker. Keep your explanation brief and neutral. Don't overshare. You want to explain the steps you're taking to improve. Again, you want to highlight progress or results. Keep it positive. Gone are the days of saying, well, I work too hard, or I'm too much of a perfectionist. That's done. They don't want you, they'll see you coming a mile away. Do not answer that. You can't say, I don't really have any weaknesses. That's also a dead in the water kind of answer. You have to come up with something. And certainly red flags like, like they can't get up with my alarm, or I don't get along well with teammates, or, I don't like to have a boss, things like that are really going to be detrimental. You don't want to share anything like that. And, I would be inclined to give a fun answer like my weakness is chocolate. That's not funny in an interview. You don't want to do that. So you want to, answer this more seriously. So let's take a look at some examples. So you might have difficulty delegating. Can someone read this one for me?
Sure, I can do it. Okay. One weakness I've been working on is delegating. I tend to take on too much myself because I want to make sure things are done well. I've been getting better by breaking projects into smaller pieces and assigning parts to team members based on their strengths. It's helped me build more trust within the team and focus on higher level priorities.
Okay, great. Thank you for reading. I tend to take on too much. And I think, the perfectionists out there might be able to see themselves in this answer, right? I'm trying to do it all myself, the control freaks. And I'm trying to get better by breaking it into smaller pieces. So it shows I'm starting to do this better and I'm building more trust within the team. I'm seeing that that's a positive result of me delegating more, and I can then focus on higher level priorities. So this shows self-awareness, but I'm working on it and it's having positive results, right? Again, we're ending with that positivity. All right, so public speaking, by the way, is a safe weakness to give because all of us have challenges with public speaking and it can make us nervous. And so this is often not a key skill needed in many, many jobs. And obviously if it's, one that is, you wouldn't mention this, but I think a lot of people talk about public speaking as an area that they're always looking to improve. So can someone give me this answer, please?
A weakness I've been improving in is public speaking. I'm comfortable in one-on-one or small group settings, but presenting to large groups used to feel intimidating. I've been intentionally practicing by volunteering to lead smaller meetings and taking a short workshop. It's helped me become more confident, and I'm continuing to build that skill.
Okay, thank you. So you see, you could say maybe I joined Toastmasters, right? It's a way that I've been practicing. You can even say, listen, I went to my boss and I asked, can I do, a brief, recap of last week's results in the meetings. Can you assign that to me so I can get some practice? It's just showing that you are working on it. It could also be something that in the past you might have said, well, I realized when I was looking to move into this industry, I worked in accounting in the past, but I realized that in addition to Excel, companies are using QuickBooks. So I took a QuickBooks course, and in fact, I'm enrolled in, another refresher course coming up, but that is something that I intentionally learned so I would be ready for this industry, to come back into the workforce, however you want to phrase it. But it's recognizing that you have worked on it in the past, or you're currently working on it. All right, so that's really all you need to think of it as, an area of professional improvement. All right, so let's talk about closing questions. So at the end, they're going to ask about your salary requirements, and they're also going to say, do you have any questions for me? These are things you have to be ready for, right? And sometimes those salary questions come even earlier in the process. What do they want to know? They want to know that they can afford you, that you're in alignment there. They also want to know, do you understand your market value, and are your expectations aligned with the role? How you value yourself does signal confidence. So you want to be careful about how you answer this question. So delay answering if you can until you understand the role and responsibilities better. You want to research your salary range for your region, Glassdoor, salary.com, PayScale. I dare say AI will answer the question for you also. You want to give a range, not a single number. You never want to get stuck on a single number. So you don't want to do that. If you're going to give a range, that lowest number of the range has to be the lowest number you would accept. Because we all, when a company posts something pays 60 to 80, we all go 80. And the company says 60, so it's where they want to get you for as little as they can, right? And you want to get as much as you can. So you're diametrically opposed there. So you want to be careful. So if from your last job you thought you were underpaid and you've done your research and the industry really is 60 to 80, but you really don't, with your years of experience, you wouldn't accept anything less than 65, make sure you're giving a 65 to 85 kind of answer versus a 60 to 80, right? Because they're going to hear that low number and say, wow, that's the lowest number that Elisa will take. So great. So be careful with what you give in your range. You want to reference your current salary only if you're staying in the same field and expecting a reasonable range. Again, you can, when you're asked to give a range, you could add what would be like, maybe a 10% bump for you if you're staying in the same industry, and then put that as the bottom of your range. You can do that. You want to highlight your value always, your skills and experience that justify your range. And you always want to have a position of, hey, we're going to work this out. I'm going to be looking at the total compensation package, because you all know that, benefits plays a big part, and you might have a higher salary but be required to pay an awful lot more per month for your health insurance versus another company that might pay less but that has great health benefits. Or one position is 60 miles from your house and the other is 5 miles. You're going to be paying more in gas and tolls, right? And that adds up. So again, this goes to, you got to play it to the end, and just always have that, we're going to work it out. And remember, you can negotiate on the final package after you get the offer. And you don't want to answer too early in the process if you can avoid it. Don't give that exact number. Don't list a range that you're not comfortable with, and don't undervalue yourself or apologize for your expectations. Again, don't be apologetic. Remember that I'm great, they're going to be lucky to have me here, and I am worth this. And so you need to be confident in your worth. And don't avoid the conversation, right? We're all uncomfortable talking about money. I don't know, I think that's ingrained in our society. Don't talk about money. But I think you have to be comfortable with advocating for yourself for a salary. All right, so, whoops. All right, so deferring the question, can somebody give this answer? So if you're asked this, like say by the HR person, how would you answer?
Sure, I'll do it. Deferring the question. I'm still learning about the role and responsibility, so I'd love to understand the full scope before discussing salary. What's most important to me is finding a mutual fit, and I'm confident we can arrive at a number that reflects the value I bring once we've explored that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you see, I'm confident we're going to arrive at a number. Like, we got this. We're going to work it out. It's going to be fine. We're going to come to agreement. You always want to have that position of, listen, I would like to learn more. I don't know enough to really comment, but I'm sure that if it's a fit, that we're going to work this out. And you always want to have that posture. It's going to be doable. All right, so here's another example that you can give. Can someone else read this for me?
Based on my research using Glassdoor and Salary.com for roles in this region, similar positions fall in the range of 68,000 to 78,000. Given my experience in project coordination and process improvement, I believe a range in that area makes sense, but I'm flexible and open to discussing the full compensation package.
Okay. Again, words like flexible and open, right? I'm going to be looking at the full compensation package. But this is very non-committal in terms of saying, well, my research is showing it's in the range of 68 to 78. You can even bounce it back to them and say, is this in alignment with what you were thinking of for this position, especially if you're talking to the HR person. My research is showing this. It's kind of like a game of chicken. You want to get them to say the number before you have to say the number. But if you can say, this is what my research is showing, is that in alignment with what you're thinking? And if they say, oh no, we're not going any higher than 65 for this job, then you can say, okay, well, then I don't know that we're in alignment, if it's really below your range. I mean, I had somebody go through an entire interview process and she was like $30,000 over what they were looking to pay. So you have to be careful, right? You don't want to waste your time. And I know that there's a movement to try and get more companies to post the range so you don't waste time. But you can always bounce it back to them. Is this along the lines of what you were thinking? So, all right. At the end, you're also going to get that, do you have any questions for me? So they want to know, are you informed? Are you engaged? Are you interested in the job? Are you evaluating the fit? This is really important that you show that you've researched the company. You're going to ask engaging, thoughtful questions. Do your questions show genuine motivation? And do you care about the team and the culture? I know many a person who has taken jobs that they really shouldn't have, that weren't a fit for them, because they didn't ask enough questions. And I think sometimes when we've been out of work for a while, we get a mindset of, well, I just have to take anything. I have to just accept the job because I need a job. And I understand that people have to pay bills. But if you can take a step back and say, okay, if I'm going to make this next move, I want to make sure it's someplace that I'm going to be staying longer than 6 months to a year. I want to really make sure there's a right fit in the company culture. And so that's why your questions are so important. You need to find what's going to be right for you. So you want to ask thoughtful job-related questions that show interest. Write down 3 to 5 questions in advance. When you're researching the company, maybe you have some questions that come up. Focus on team fit, expectation.
Do you have any questions for me? So the tips for answering, we went through the do's. Use this moment to show engagement and reinforce that you're excited about the opportunity. Don'ts. Don't say you have no questions. Do not say you have no questions. Don't ask things you should already know from the job posting or company website. Don't ask personal questions to the interviewer. Don't ask too many or overly complex questions. Don't ask about sensitive or inappropriate topics. And don't ask about salary, benefits, vacation, flexible hours. Those are saved for after you receive an offer. So I have a tip actually about the don't say you have no questions. So what happens if the questions that you prepared, the 3 to 5, were answered through the conversation? I say thumbs up. That is fantastic because that means that it worked really well, the interview, the two-way that you're supposed to have a dialogue and a discussion. So what you can say is you can repeat and say, I actually had these 3 questions. Say what they were. I actually had these 3 questions about X, Y, and Z, and we discussed them already. Perhaps, and that's the way, because sometimes that happens, or you're left with only one question because the others were addressed. Don't just say, oh, all my questions were addressed. Bring them up again, and then you can have more conversation, because the goal of your interview is to have a dialogue, conversation, for them to see that you're not just a robot, that you're engaging, and they have to get a feel for you. Kathy, you good?
I'm good. Thank you. Yes. Public
Okay.
speaking, a nightmare, right? Having a coughing fit in the middle.
All
right,
good.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. And thank you, Elisa. So let's look at, Questions you can ask. So what's good to ask about? So I'm going to add to what Elisa just said. I think that is good to say, hey, I had those questions, you've answered them. It showed that you were ready. And can you share more about typical day-to-day responsibilities, the pace of a day, typical day? If hired, what would you want me to accomplish in the first 60 to 90 days? What is the single most important indicator of success in this role? How would you describe the organization's management style? This is a great question for, you can ask for human resources. You can ask the hiring manager. What you can ask about their management style as well personally. This is always good. People like to talk about themselves. You can say, what do you personally enjoy most about working here? If they say, well, I can't, like, oh, what do I enjoy most? I enjoy when it's 5 o'clock on a Friday. Ha ha, can't wait to get out. You know, what is that telling you about the company culture? Do people kind of light up about it? My son went to a college job fair recently, and he said he talked to 3 people at one table. And his comment to me was, he said, they all seemed like they really liked the company. They liked working there. That was his takeaway, right? So do people like working there? Are the people, you know, talking positively about their experience there? That you need to listen for. You can ask them, how long have you been with the company? What has your experience been like? You can say, how did you get your start here? You know, people do like to share their stories, right? Get some personal information, especially if this person's going to be your boss, right? You want to get some information about them. You can ask the HR person, can you describe the company culture? What is the greatest challenge the company or team is currently facing? Maybe that's a good question for a higher level executive, the VP maybe. What are the company's main goals for the upcoming year? Also a good question for a higher level person, right? You're not going to ask the VP what are the day-to-day responsibilities or the pace of a typical day, right? You have to think about your audience. Who are you meeting with? Which questions? Remember, HR is focusing on, you know, cultural fit, right? And do you seem like you're a team player? Are you going to fit there? So maybe you ask them some of those culture questions. The other things about accomplishing things in the first 60 to 90 days, that's definitely for the hiring manager. And then the bigger picture, you know, corporate goal questions are for the higher level folks. So those, just keep in mind who your audience is when you're asking these questions. So following up after the interview, and this is really important, not everybody does this, but it will set you apart as a candidate to follow up. You want to, first of all, at the end of the interview, express interest in the role. So after that, do you have any questions for us? And you say, oh, you've answered them. Oh, I had this other question. I think we're good. Thank you so much. You know, I'm even more excited now than when I first sat down this morning. I'm really enthused to hear about this project and that project. I think I could really hit the ground running. Can you tell me where you are in the process and what next steps will be? So you have to get an idea at the end. Try and close it out. Show that you're enthusiastic, show that you want the job, right? They want to offer the job to somebody who is going to say yes. So you need to show genuine interest in the role before leaving the interview. And you definitely want to try and get an idea of timelines. They might say, well, you're the first person we've interviewed and we're doing interviews this week and next week. So you're not going to be in a tizzy that you didn't hear back right away, right? You know it's going to be a couple of weeks before they even get to second rounds. So try and do yourself a favor, and this way you're going home and writing down, okay, they said 2 weeks. I'm going to mark my calendar of when I'm going to follow up with that person I interviewed with. You do want to send a personalized thank you email to each interviewer. You know, back in the day, there's been advice like write a handwritten note. You know, with snail mail, I don't know when they would see it. I mean, it's kind of hard. I did hear a story years ago of somebody who actually FedEx like overnighted a handwritten thank you note, and because she's like, who doesn't open a FedEx, right? Who doesn't open like this special envelope? But I'll leave that to you if you want to spend the money on that. I suppose if it's your dream job, maybe you want to do that. But an email is fine. Make the effort. If you don't have everybody's email, send it back, address it to, you know, all the people you met with, and send it back to the recruiter and say, can you please share this with the hiring team? And hopefully they will forward it for you. It's nice if you can do a personalized email, but any email, you know, for each one, but even if you just send it to the group you met with, especially if you did like a video panel interview, just get one done. It's more important to do one. So I'm going to tell you that. You want to just reaffirm your interest and follow up politely after the stated timeline. I wish that things were different right now. I know everybody's out there getting ghosted. They're not hearing back. A lot of time is passing. Now we're at the holidays. Things slow down because people are out of the office. But you are a human being with dignity, and you deserve the dignity of an answer. This is your life. You're trying to find a job, and you want to know yes, no, maybe, like where are we at? So don't feel badly about asking. You want to be careful not to be pushy. You don't want to be a pest, or you don't want to be obnoxious about it, but just that, hey, I made a note that we're going to be wrapping up first round interviews in about 2 weeks. So I'm just checking in to see if you're, moving forward in the process, and just to reiterate my interest, however you want to word it, but just a checking in. Or maybe you add value with, hey, I thought of you today. I saw this article. Hope to hear from you soon. Looking forward, to next steps in the process. However, you can add something professional and just kind of stay front of mind. All right, that's what you want to do. And we kind of finished a little bit early, but I guess we have time for questions, Lisa, and then we'll do our breakout sessions at 11:30. So thank you all for your attention. I know that was a lot of material. And again, this is not meant to be comprehensive. It was kind of like the key interview questions that you need to prepare for. I will tell you that if you have an interview soon, this is my advice. If you can't prepare for all these questions, do two things. One is practice your answer to tell me about yourself, and the other is to prepare 5 accomplishment stories. If you do nothing else, do those two things. All right. And my handout for all of you today will reflect that.
Kathy, thank you very much. This was excellent, so tangible, so insightful, and everybody's going to find it extremely valuable, especially the handouts that you've graciously offered to give us. So I wanted to thank you very much for being our guest speaker today for JVS Job Seekers, and hopefully we'll see everybody else next time.